Welcome to the Awakening podcast, where we have truth tellers and not whistleblowers, where we have facts and not conspiracy theories. The podcast with solutions. Today, my guest has written over 20 books. A big hero of mine and more. I believe he's the one man that has woken up more people. Please welcome David Icke.
Hello, thank you, mate.
So, first I'd like to talk, what's your thoughts on, say, Julian Assange?
Well, Julian Assange is a symptom of current times, and it was, just ahead of current times. There is an effort to stop any exposure of any official narrative. And through WikiLeaks, of course, a lot of documents were released that showed that many official stories are just that. They're stories, they're made up, they're lies. So these two things are going side by side. On one side, you've got the example being made of him, because that's what this is all about. It's saying, this is what happens if you take us on. This is what happens if you expose what we're doing, if you expose the system. And on the other side, you've got this hysteria of censorship getting more and more extreme all the time, not least through Silicon Valley, where any other explanation or significant undermining of the official story of the quote virus narrative are being deleted. I mean, I've been deleted from YouTube, I've been deleted from Facebook because of what I was saying about the virus narrative. And so if you had the situation with Julian Assange basically in the run up to this, and they're all connected, because when you have an official narrative, which the public has to believe if your agenda is going to be is to come into being, then you not only have to control what you say, you have to control what you say being exposed and being unraveled. And this is what we have. And there's no better blatant example of that than the World Health Organization, headed by this guy, Tedros, who every time he opens his mouth, Bill Gates is speaking. And he is giving the official narrative of the virus and the pandemic, which indeed he declared. And at the same time, the Silicon Valley giants are saying they will censor, and indeed are censoring, anything that exposes the lies and the nonsense coming out of the mouth of Tedros and the World Health Organization. So, Julian Assange is a symptom of the time, and well, so am I in a way. But what you have to do is just get up and get on with it, not fall into this idea that I'm a victim and they're all powerful. You just have to get up and get on with it and deal with whatever you face, and somehow you find a way around it.
Exactly. And like I noted a few of my posts recently, the fact checkers, they stated that it was the FDA and the World Health Organization were proving what I had written was wrong. So, we're kind of not.
Yeah, that's the other thing, the fact checkers are another big part of all this, because when you break down the background to these fact checkers, they are actually controlled by the same networks that are putting out the official narratives via governments and via the World Health Organization in terms of this pandemic. And they are not, obviously, therefore, people who are looking dispassionately at whether something's true or not. If it's challenging the official narrative, they're going to say it's not true. It's all a scam, because if you are a few, and they are compared with the global population, and you want to control the many, you have to control the perceptions of the many. So from perception comes behavior. You control behavior by programming perception, and you program perception by controlling information. And so this advancing of this agenda now, it's happening very, very fast, obviously, as human society transforms, is founded on control of information. Because if the information that's available about this pandemic and its background were widely circulating in the public arena, then a lot of what they're enforcing and what they're imposing would not be possible, because the nonsense behind it would be exposed and the people could see it. But the censorship obviously is designed to stop them seeing it. So all they hear is the official story. And I was watching a report earlier today about a poll in America, a survey in America, where it was very clear from the poll that the majority of the population had no idea about this virus and alleged virus and the figures surrounding it. And it's, even if you go by the official story, its fatality rate. And part of this survey found that a very large number of people believe that about one third, rather, not 2/3, about 1/3 of the fatalities from this, quote, virus were young people, when it's a tiny fraction of young people, even according to the official narrative, that have been affected by this. So it's the power of the propaganda to program perception and thus dictate behavior is in our face. I mean, I meet people when I go around, and I hear them talking, or I have conversations with them about the, quote, virus, and what they say is absolutely provable, even by official figures and data, utterly untrue. But because that's all they've heard, that's what they believe. So it's all about controlling information, so you control perception, so you dictate behavior. And, therefore, people like me and others in the alternative media are being targeted by these people. But like I say, you just have to get up and get on with it and find a way around it.
I mean, I know from talking to people that, like, people working in the hospital, they're told not to say nothing. I mean, we've seen the videos around the place where they're quiet, but I know somebody like that, they're working in a hospital and they're advised not to say nothing. And I know that's a fair tactic, because they're trying to scare people. You lose your job, you'll be discriminated against. Like, how do we overcome this? Because it's gone to a stage now where we can't even go outside our house without having to put on a mask.
Well, I do, and I'll never put on a mask, and the consequences of that will be what they are, because I'm not doing it. But I won't do anything. I won't do any of this stuff. I don't do this sanitizing. I don't do this track and trace, giving me details. Don't do any of it. I won't do it. And I know some people, they give false names and false details, and that's fine. And, good luck to you. But I won't even do that. I'm just not doing it. And we have reached a point now where it is so extreme, and it was always coming to this. Crikey, this is a long-term plan, which is why I was able to, predict where this was going long ago.
And just to let the listeners know, because like I had seen a video in 2013, and I know going back, where you were saying about the mass injections, the tracking and everything you have been saying years back has come through.
Yeah, and why is that? And what does that mean? It means that what's happening now is not random. I couldn't predict current events long ago if they were random. How could you do that? You were able to predict them because you uncover a plan, an agenda for humanity to transform human society, which, if it's not headed off, which if it's not stopped, is going to become the future. And this is what's happened. The idea of what I do is to alert enough people so it doesn't become the future. So this agenda does not play out and the world and the quote future becomes so predictable. And you can find a solution or look for a solution to a situation or you can do the sensible thing and remove the cause. Because if you remove the cause of something, then it must disappear because the cause is gone. And therefore the effect must go. And the cause of where we are is human acquiescence to authority and human acquiescence to the perceived power of authority. And that power is no more than the power that the population give to authority all the time. They give them power by their perception of power, but they also give them their power by acquiescence. And so when you look at the transformation of human society since all around the world, since March, the speed of that is exactly equivalent to the speed that people have acquiesced to it. You know, when you look at all the people, and then you look at all the shops and all the other buildings where people are told that they have to wear masks, well, if people refuse to do it, it would be unenforceable. There's not enough police officers to enforce it. There's too many people if they didn't acquiesce and didn't do it. And what are the authorities going to do? They can't do anything about it. They have no power because humanity has taken its power back and said, I'm not wearing a mask. I'm not damaging my health by breathing in my own carbon dioxide and not enough oxygen. I'm not doing it. And it will be over. It will be unenforceable. But what happens is, you see it all the time, is some brainless dark suit in authority, political authority or administrative authority says people have to do this, and people do it. Yeah. And that's what I mean by the authorities have no power except the power that the people give them. And, you know, I hear people moaning. I do understand it, but I hear people moaning about what's happened and are moaning about having to wear masks, moaning about social distancing or unsocial distancing as it really is, and moaning about this and moaning about that. And I do it, like I say, I understand that. But, you know, if we're going to sort this out, we have to start taking some responsibility here. Yes, we can point out the agenda. We can point out the people who are imposing the agenda, and we should. But it's only imposable because we acquiesce to it. We're responsible, as much responsible as the people that are seeking to impose it. In fact, even more responsible because we're the ones that have the power to stop it happening. They don't have the power to impose it unless we give them our power to do it and recycle it back against us. But we have the power to stop it. And so, you know, I'd say to people, you know, if you're moaning about it and you don't like it, stop moaning. Just don't do it. You know, and yeah, okay, but what are the consequences? Well, I tell you, as someone who's been researching this full time for 30 years, the consequences of not doing it, of not ceasing to acquiesce, are absolutely horrific. I mean, I did an interview for about 2.5 hours yesterday with some people in Melbourne, Australia, in Victoria. And what's happening there as we speak is full-blown fascism. And someone said to me, well, why is it happening in Australia? Why was it happening there now? Because it's their winter. They're in the southern
doing the
hemisphere.
mandatory vaccines there, yes?
It's their winter, yeah. And we're coming towards, day after day, our winter, our fall, autumn, winter. And what is happening in Australia now is a precursor for what's meant to happen in the Northern Hemisphere. So how long are we going to just accept this? How much more extreme does it have to get before we draw a line and say, enough? You know, what they've done in Australia is that they have passed laws that allow the state to take people's children away if they don't do things like have them tested. You know, this is what's coming.
And Ireland, I'm not sure, are you aware, Ireland have made the police have more rights that they can break into your house without a warrant if they think you're having social gathering.
Yeah, this is also happening, and for other reasons, in places like Australia. I mean, in Victoria, they're smashing windscreens of people who are not following the rules as imposed. And that's not some conspiracy theory. That's the commissioner of police who made a statement to that effect in a news conference. And what I was reading the other day regard to Ireland is a classic, really. They were saying that, well, certainly some schools were saying that when the schools return and the kids are wearing masks all day, which is just child abuse. There's no other way of putting it. It's child abuse. And it's abuse of their health, and it's absolute abuse of their psychology. But they were saying that they would have to have some breathing breaks. What? Breathing breaks, where the kids can go out and take the mask off for a few minutes before they go back in the classroom. So what that's saying is, we accept that wearing a mask all day, the children are not going to be taking in enough oxygen, the normal rate of oxygen. So we have to give them breathing breaks. And I say this, where's the bloody parents? Are parents going to allow their kids to go to school with masks on all day where they have to have breathing breaks so they can, because they're not getting enough oxygen? I mean, what people stand for is extraordinary. And what they're doing is systematically, because this is all psychology, it's nothing to do with health, breaking down people into a state of subservience. And this is the real reason for the masks. What this global cult that's behind this, as I call it, is actually about, is targeting the human subconscious mind. That's the whole stadium where this is played out. So the idea is to subliminally, below the threshold of the conscious mind, program the subconscious mind with behavior traits and perceptual traits and response traits. And then they filter through to the conscious mind, at which point the person thinks they're having their own thoughts, their own opinions, and their own emotional reactions, when actually they've been implanted in the subconscious. So every single thing that's happening, whether it's the masks or social distancing, all these different things, there's a conscious mind explanation for why. Then there's the real explanation, which is the subconscious explanation. So people are told, conscious mind, that you have to wear masks to protect from this virus, a virus they've never isolated, purified, and showed to exist, by the way. But the subconscious is the real reason, because the subconscious mind, there's a language of the subconscious, which is symbolism. This is why this cult and these satanic groups and secret societies that form this cult collectively have a language of symbolism. This is why you see their symbols everywhere. The classic famous one, of course, is the pyramid and all-seeing eye on the reverse of the Great Seal of the United States and on the dollar bill, because symbols talk to the subconscious. And so they put subliminal inserts into advertisements and other situations, because subliminal inserts below threshold means that the conscious mind can't see the insert, it can only see the general image, but the subconscious mind does and absorbs it, and it gives perceptual instructions to the subconscious mind. One of the techniques I was reading about years ago was that they'll put a subliminal insert in an advert which the conscious mind doesn't see. And when someone's walking down the supermarket aisle, suddenly they'll be attracted to a product which they've never been attracted to before, and there's no conscious mind reason why they would be, but they go over and they look at it and they pick it up. That's because they're responding to a subliminal insert about that product, which they never even know went in their mind. So if you look at the masks at the subconscious, subliminal, symbolic level, they are a symbol of subjugation. They are a symbol of submission. They're a symbol of being silenced, covering the mouth, And crucially, they are a symbol of the deletion of individuality. I mean, you go down the street and everyone looks the same facially. There's no facial expression, which is a big expression of individuality. You don't know if someone's smiling. You don't know if they're scowling. You don't know any of these things. And human interaction works very much with facial expressions. So that's what it's really all about. And in these different countries, especially in Britain, which in many ways, from the secret society point of view, is driving much of this stuff around the world. They have a private company, half owned by the British government Cabinet Office in Downing Street, Whitehall, called the Behavioural Insights Team, known as the Nudge Unit. And they study human behaviour and how to manipulate human perception to manipulate human behaviour. And that Behavioural Insights Team is what is driving the changes. It's driving the masks. It's driving the unsocial distancing. And so you have a lady in Britain called Professor Susan Mikey, who was very vocal in pressing for mandatory masks in shops and so on. And she's a government advisor, science advisor, but she's not a medical advisor. She's a professor of psychology. This is what's happening. The human behavior is being dramatically modified, and they're targeting the kids because they get them early. They modify their behavior so that they will be compliant adults as this thing gets more and more extreme. Like I say,
they're putting the subliminal messages in cartoons as well.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, I think there's a picture in the answer of like a montage of pyramids and all-seeing eyes in children's animated cartoons. The number of times you see it is ridiculous because it's speaking to their subconscious. Like I say, it filters through to the conscious mind, and they think they're their own thoughts and own opinions, but they're not. This is what's happening to our kids. This is what's happening to our world. And people just still, don't get it because they just believe what they're told. A lot of people don't get it because they don't want to get it because they don't want to face the situation we're in. And others get it, or get some of it, but are too frightened of the consequences of standing out and standing up. This has to change.
Like in Poland, I'm the only one, like I go into a supermarket, I'm the only one not wearing a mask. I refuse to do it. And if somebody doesn't serve me, I won't go into the shop, I leave and I go to some place that they accept it. But like my son is 6, he understands it. He even says, how come you have to wear a mask on up to the counter, but you can sit down and eat your food? He's 6 years of age and he understands it. Yet there's a load of adults don't get it. They don't realize there's a game being played there.
No, because so many people have been manipulated to give their mind away, literally give their mind away. They're what I call them press enter people, where the government puts the data in with the propaganda and the so-called information, and they press enter, and the great chunks of the population just do whatever they're told. So therefore, you've given your mind away. And one of the other things that is happening, and it's all part of this psychology, because it's a very, very deep science, psychology and manipulation of behavior. People look at bureaucracies and governments and they point out things that they do that are stupid and ridiculous and contradictory. And they think that it's incompetence and it's just stupidity. Well, of course, there are incompetent, stupid people in government. But if you go into the shadows where this is coming from, nothing to do with incompetence and stupidity. It's to do with behavior manipulation. Because if the government says to you, you got to do this, and you say, okay, I'll look at what you're saying. I'm going to do my own research. I'm going to see if what you're saying makes sense. And if it does, I will do it. But it will be my decision to do it on the basis that I have looked to see if what you're saying has validity. Now that's still holding your sovereignty. It's still holding the sovereignty of your own mind because you're making the decision. But what they do, and my goodness, have we seen this in the last few months? They'll put out rules that are clearly ridiculous and make no sense. And they do it on purpose. So in part of this rolling madness, or on the face of it madness, in Britain, you could have a estate agent in your house, you could have a nanny in your house from outside, but you couldn't have your father, mother, grandfather and grandmother in your house. And you couldn't meet them in the garden, but you could meet them in a park, and you could only meet them one or the other, not both together. Now, this is utterly ridiculous. The mask thing makes no sense, because even if you believe there is a virus, and I make an enormous case for the fact there's not in the answer, the viral particles are so minute compared with the holes in masks. It's not going to protect you from anything. And of course, the health ramifications are well documented. There's endless scientific research supporting that. So why do they do it when it's so ridiculous? Because if they can give you ridiculous things to do, which are even better if you can see they're ridiculous, but you still do them, then what they're doing is breaking down all resistance to instruction and imposition. And because this is going into far, far more extreme places as this script unfolds, unless there is pushback and a lack of an end to acquiescence, they need to break down people's resistance before they hit those really, really extreme things. We're seeing some of them now in Victoria in Australia. And so this is partly what's happened so far. It's partly fascistic imposition, and it's partly breaking down resistance to imposition for the big extreme stuff still to come, unless we realize that if you think it's bad now, and you think, oh, what are the consequences for me now? Well, just let's carry on as we are, and you'll see what consequences are coming along, and they're far worse than standing up now and saying, I'm not doing it.
They've already started. Like I see here, a lot of the businesses have shut down. The commercial has dropped. In Ireland, the Irish government, they voted for the vulture funds, a new right that they're starting to evict people and everything. A lot of people think they're going to be looked after by their government. But this is basically, there's going to be a lot of suicides because of this, a lot of depression. And there's no talk about that because of what they're actually doing.
Yeah, they're breaking down the psychology of humanity. They're breaking down their spirit. They're breaking down them psychologically. And they're doing it to the kids, which is why I keep saying, where's the bloody parents? What are you doing? Yeah. Got to send me children back to school. What? Have you seen what they're going to do to them when you get there? And so this is a point where we have to draw a line. Otherwise, this is going to get more and more extreme and more difficult to turn around, because this is a script that's unfolding, and one that has been in the planning for a very long time. Does anyone really think that, given the coordination around the world that's gone on and the fine detail of stuff that's gone on, that they would just decided to do this stuff in March? It's been waiting there to be played out for a very long time, and the virus hoax was just the trigger to justify and have an excuse for it. But before any of this virus stuff came about, what's happening now was all sitting there waiting to go. It's been planned for ages.
Yeah, they had for 10 years, there's a report that was documented. And in October, they had a plan where, as if there was an epidemic came through. and exactly what they were saying is what's happening now. And like, if you can't see
But
that and realize that this isn't set up, you know, it's going to be hard to get through to people.
Yeah, it's virtually word for word. You're talking about Event 201 a few weeks before this came to light in China, officially came to light in China. The Bill Gates Foundation and the Johns Hopkins University operation and the 1% fest known as the World Economic Forum, they produced this simulation of a coronavirus pandemic. And when you watch the film of it, what they were saying or simulating would happen is exactly what they've done. I mean, come on, people. But then again, you see, when you research this stuff and you have the self-respect to look at things yourself and not just accept the official version of everything, then you see the world in a certain way, because you give yourself access to far more information, therefore insight, than you'll get in the mainstream media. But the vast majority of people still just get their news, what passes for it, and therefore their perceptions from the mainstream media. And the mainstream media, look at it, it's spoken as one voice all over the world. It's been the official story of everything, and anything challenging that just doesn't get mentioned. Because, you know, to understand how this has happened is to understand how the world's been manipulated in the shadows all along. There's a global web, and this global web, which has a central point, what I call the spider, which is dictating the agenda of the web worldwide. This web controls all these different institutions and organizations which appear on the surface to be independent of each other. So it created the World Health Organization via the Rockefeller family that are massively involved in this. It created the Mao Revolution in China, and thus the Chinese regime that's happened there ever since. And what they've done in China is to incubate a system of control, not least through technology, which they have long planned to play out across the world. And so it's no accident that this, quote, virus started in China. And the Chinese response to it, draconian lockdown, was then transferred to the West. Oh, that's the way to do it, said the World Health Organization. And it's no accident that in this pandemic period, alleged pandemic period, that the Chinese way of controlling people is come more and more and more into the West. And, you know, I saw some pictures today of Wuhan. Remember Wuhan, where this thing's supposed to have started? Oh, and all these people, oh God, look what's happening in China. You notice people were collapsing in the street in Wuhan. People collapsing in the street in the West from the same virus. But the pictures I saw today were thousands of people at a music concert in Wuhan. Well, look what's happening in the West. The whole thing's been a scam. Yeah. The virus is a scam because they've never shown it to exist. The test that they're testing to see you've got the virus is not testing for the virus, the RT-PCR test, where its creator, Kerry Mullis, in the 1980s, said this test must not be used to diagnose infectious disease. And now they're using it to do just that, to tell you if you've got this non-existent virus or not. You know, you saw the Chinese government building hospitals in 10 days because of this pandemic. Oh, and then suddenly, as soon as he got transferred to the West and the West started going in that direction, well, suddenly it was okay in China. And the hospitals were shut, even if they were used in the first place. And now they're having concerts with thousands of people. And look what's happening in the West. It's a total scam from start to finish.
Yeah. And what about people? Because there's people I know, and anything I put up, they're objecting and they're writing. And I found out that there's a few friends of mine that their buddies had died of what's being told as corona. What, like, we see that there's doctors coming out and they're telling how to cure whatever it is that's there. Like, what's your thoughts on that for the people that actually are dying from this?
Well, they're not dying from this. You see, if you say to people, and this was the same situation in China when it started, and it's been the same situation everywhere since. You say to them, okay, how do you know? Because let's just break this down. What do they say the symptoms of this coronavirus are?
It changes.
Flu-like symptoms, yes, but they're adding more symptoms because they want to pull more people in and convince them they've got this virus. But it's flu-like symptoms and respiratory symptoms. Respiratory disease is the third biggest killer in the world, worldwide. And in Wuhan, where the atmosphere is globally infamous, it's so toxic, they have tremendous amounts of respiratory disease. Where this crisis, this coronavirus crisis broke out, we were told, in Italy, northern Italy, in Lombardy, it's the same. It's infamous for its toxic air and therefore its respiratory disease. So what were they doing? First of all, they were, and continue in many cases, to diagnose COVID-19 from symptoms. And the symptoms are the same as a range of other things that people were dying of before, that were redesignated COVID-19. Give you a wonderful example that's happening now. They can't hardly find any flu in South Africa in their winter. It's the lowest flu for decades. In the province, which includes South Africa's biggest city, Johannesburg, and its capital city, Pretoria, there's one case of flu this winter. But there's over 500,000 cases of virus positives and about 11,000 odd designated COVID deaths. It's a redesignation. People are dying what they've always died of, but it's been redesignated COVID-19. This is where the cases are coming from. So someone says, well, my friend died of COVID-19. Okay. So how do you know they had COVID-19? They either say, one, well, the doctors said the symptoms were COVID-19. Well, yeah, but they're the symptoms of loads of other things as well. Or two, they tested positive in the test. But the test isn't testing for the virus because it can't. One of the things that the test can't do, Kerry Mullis, the creator, pointed this out, as well as endless other medical professionals, it can't detect how much of a virus you have. And as medical professionals have pointed out, you have to have a lot of an infectious agent like the virus before it affects your health. But this test can't test for how much virus you have. So what it's testing for is genetic material. It's not testing for a specific virus. It's not. And so people are testing positive because the genetic material of various kinds in the test is picked up by the test and test positive, but it's not tested positive for the virus. So all these cases, oh, we got more cases. You know, they're not testing positive for the virus. So if you test positive in this PCR test, it doesn't mean you've got COVID-19. This is why 85% plus of people that test positive have no symptoms because there's nothing wrong with them. They haven't got any infectious disease at all. That's not what the test is picking up. And so the cases are coming from a test not testing for the virus, and the deaths are coming from redesignation of cause of death. Why, if you have a real virus that's real deadly, do you have to give American hospitals massive financial incentives to diagnose COVID-19? Because they changed the rules in America through the Medicare care system when this started, that hospitals are paid, still goes on, $4,600 if they diagnose a regular pneumonia, $13,000 if they diagnose the same symptoms as COVID-19 pneumonia, and $39,000 if they put a COVID diagnosed patient on a ventilator. So why do you have to give financial incentives? Why? You see, in Britain, and it will be the same in so many other countries, in Britain, once you've tested positive for a virus, which the test is not testing for, you cannot die of anything else. This is the rules. Because once you've tested positive, whatever you die of, falling down the stairs, motorcycle accident, COVID-19 will go on your death certificate, because it's building up the death figures. And as we come into the winter in the Northern Hemisphere, they're going to go hysterical. Every sniff, every cough, every pneumonia, COVID-19.
Are people covered for insurance? Because I'm not sure, is that true? I had heard that because it's a pandemic, they're not covered for insurance. So the people that actually do die, they won't have proper insurance.
Well, that's possible. I haven't come across that one, but that will possible. We'll have to check that out. But you know, I've sat in restaurants, and I've been listening to the conversations at the table next to me, where people are saying, I was listening to one the other week. They were talking loudly. I wasn't, cocking my ear in, and they were saying, but they never died of COVID-19. And they were explaining how a loved one had been designated to have died of it when they died of absolutely something else. Because if you test positive, you might have a late stage cancer, but you're still going to have COVID-19 on your death certificate. On my website about 3 weeks ago, there was a recorded tape between a member of the family and the coroner's office in a British city. And the family member was asking when they were going to get a cause of death for their loved one. And the coroner's office lady said, well, we tested them for COVID-19 and we sent it off, and the results not come back yet. And they said, so if it comes back positive, COVID-19 will go on the death certificate. And if it comes back negative, then there'll be a post-mortem to find out what they died of. Because they're suspended post-mortems. As long as they're tested positive with a test not testing for the virus, they don't do post-mortems. It's an extraordinary scam. And the reason that this virus, which I say doesn't exist, and I make the case with enormous amounts of evidence in the answer. The reason it seems to be killing old people, and particularly very old people, and not the young, is because if you are getting your deaths by redesignation of diagnosis, redesignation of cause of death from what really killed them to COVID-19, well, you ain't going to find many young people dying, because they don't, because they're young. So you're not going to be able to diagnose cause of death with many young people, because they don't die. But old people, and particularly very old people, are going to have many, many reasons to die, which you can redesignate COVID-19. So the Italian authorities had to admit, after all that furore and, oh, look what's happening, that 99% of those who were designated to have died of COVID-19 in Italy, in that whole, quote, crisis, had 1, 2, 3, 4 or more comorbidities, other reasons to die. And the Italian authorities admitted later, after all the propaganda had gone around the world, that they were, quote, generous, that was the word they used, in designating COVID-19 on death certificates. You've had the chief scientific advisor, a guy called Patrick Vallance in Britain, saying publicly that just because someone has, wait for this, he said this publicly, just because someone has COVID-19 on the death certificate doesn't mean they died of COVID-19. And the medical chief in Illinois I quote her in the answer, said exactly the same about what was happening there. It's a scam. And so what they've done during the summer in the Northern Hemisphere is they can't generate the same number of deaths, not least because the British Lung Foundation has pointed out that in the summer, 80%, there are 80% less respiratory diseases in the summer compared with the winter. So what they've done, not just in Britain, but all around the world, is they've moved from frightening people with deaths, as they did in the winter spring, to cases. And this is another inversion. Everywhere you look, there's an inversion, and they're so blatantly obvious if you have a mind of your own. But if you just believe what you're told, well, they're not obvious because you're not looking, so they can't be obvious. But what they're saying is that people have to get tested. There's adverts in Britain all the time, government-paid adverts, saying that if we want to go back to normal, they show you pictures of football stadiums full of people and concerts and everything. Oh, we want to go back to normal, you've got to get tested, and then we can get back to normal. But they know that the more people that get tested, the more positives they're going to get, not for a virus, but for genetic material that many, many people have in their bodies. And thus they're going to have more cases. And when they get more cases, they're not going back to normal. They're saying, oh, more cases, we've got to lock down. That's what they're doing in New Zealand. That's what they're doing in Victoria.
They're doing it with the flights now as well, that if you want to fly anywhere, you have to get the swab.
Everywhere. And because the more they do it, the more cases they're going to get, the more they'll frighten you with the cases. But this is the inversion. Even if you accept that there is a quote, infectious virus, the official estimates now, and they will be smaller than this now for reasons I'll come to, are that if you're under 70, the percentage of people that go from infection to fatality is 0.004% if you're under 70. If you take the over 70s into account, then it's still 0.26%. However, since that estimate was made a few weeks ago, there has been enormous amounts of testing around the world. And people have tested positive, but had no symptoms, because nothing wrong with them, because not testing for a virus or an infectious agent, because you can't, this test. And therefore, they should be punching the air. Because everyone who tests positive and has no symptoms doesn't end up in hospital and doesn't die, which is virtually everybody now in this summer, even according to official figures. Then everyone that does that, the percentage of people that go from infection to fatality gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And with each one, this quote virus becomes less and less and less and less deadly. So it's a good thing, even by their ridiculous narrative, it's a good thing if people test positive and have no symptoms, because it means that this virus is not the deadly virus that they claimed it was. But what they're doing is presenting that as the opposite. Oh, we've got more cases. Oh, we're going to shut down, cut down, and lock down. And anyone with a mind on active duty can see that. But so many don't have minds on active duty. They've given their minds away, and so they can't see it. Oh,
is it 5 corporations own 90% of the media? So they're just constantly brainwashing. Like you turn on any station, it's just Corona. They're after brainwashing people that it's a fear factor. They're just terrified.
Yeah, I tell you what I have noticed. You probably noticed as well. Is normally you would just do a headline. So and so virus, so and so. It would just be a headline relating to whatever the story is. But all over the world, you see the same technique. It's coronavirus, and then the headline. So coronavirus starts out in headline after headline after headline after headline all over the world, no matter what the headline goes on to say. And that is not a coincidence when it's so coordinated over such a vast number of media outlets. It is all psychology. And like we said earlier, you get your behavior from your perception, you get your perception from the information you receive. So look at what's happened in the last few months. And unless people have gone looking for it out of self-respect for themselves, all they've had is the same recurring story all over the world, day after day after day after day. And what did the Nazis say? You know, the bigger the lie, the more we'll believe it, and keep telling a big lie over and over and over again, and it fuses into everybody knows that when they don't know it at all.
Yeah. And what about, like, say, in America? Because, like, you hear of Fauci and all the bad things he's done. And I know that there's a lot of people, they think, like, say, Trump is going to be the savior. But if I look at I'm more confused now than I've ever been in my life. Because if I look at the different things that he's done, I'm not inspired. There's some things that he's doing that it looks right. But it seems to me there's like a passive power from one evil cabal to another. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, this global web doesn't like surprises. It wants to control everything. And so it's not interested in mavericks coming to power in politics. And it's certainly not interested in controlling one political party that can form a government. It has to control any political party that can form a government. So no matter who wins, it's in the government. What we've seen in America is, again, massive psychological manipulation, because you had a massive constituency of people who had been ignored in the United States for decades. And along came Trump to appeal to that constituency. Is what got him in. And he presented himself as the maverick, the outsider. Well, when you look at Trump's background, his family is anything but an outsider. And he starts off, I think it was 16 people he had to defeat to get the nomination in the Republican Party. And you're not going to do that if they don't want you. It was played out, or no, this Trump, or no, people in the Republican Party don't want Trump. Well, they could have stopped him then, because it's well documented with leaked emails and documents that the Democratic Party fixed the nomination voting to stop Bernie Sanders beating Hillary Clinton. So Hillary Clinton would get the nomination and went against Trump. Now, if the Democratic Party can do it, so can the Republican Party do it, but they didn't. And he wins the nomination against all the odds. And then they bring him to power and he wins the election. You don't do that if the powers that control the media and control the finance, et cetera, don't want you to be there. And one of the things I was saying in 2016, is in the run-up to him winning and after he won, is that he'd been brought to power in America to divide America. How much of that he realized is open to debate, but that's why he was brought to power. If you read the manuals and instruction manuals of how to create or transform a society from, if you like, democratic to Marxist, and I'll give you an example. There was a book called Rules for Radicals, and it was written by a Marxist called Saul Alinsky out of Chicago. He was followed by people like Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi. And in Rules for Radicals, he says, one of the key ways that you transform a society by dividing it is you don't focus your ire upon faceless bureaucrats, bureaucracies, and corporations. You pick an individual. You pick an individual and you because what do the Nazis say? Keep your propaganda simple. You focus on an individual, and you focus all your hatred, and you focus the blame for everything upon that one person. So they become the focus of the hatred from one side, and that's real simple. You're going to say, oh, well, this bureaucracy, and then there was that corporate. No, one person. Keep it simple. And if you look at what's happened since 2016, that's what's happened, because the left in America, what they call the Democrats, not that they're the left, have been hijacked by this woke mentality, which is the fake left. It's not left at all. It's tyrannical. It's far right, actually. This is the woke left that's behind the political correctness and open borders and a list of things behind the whole climate change caused by humans, hoax, etc. And it's been funded, both the mentality into being via the schools, universities, etc., by the 1%, the billionaire corporations and the billionaires, and not least people like George Soros, who's put $32 billion so far into the open society foundations that he runs, that are basically funding this whole woke agenda in its many, many forms. And this woke mentality has taken over the Democratic Party, completely taken it over. And it's not the party of Kennedy anymore and people like that. That's long gone. I grew up in the traditional left on a housing estate, council housing estate in Leicester. And that left opposed destruction of freedom of speech. It opposed the injustices and the abuse of power by what were then millionaires, now billionaires and corporations, etc. But the woke mentality is in bed with them. It's funded by them. And so a great example is the organization Black Lives Matter. It's completely controlled, created, and funded to extraordinary amounts of money by billionaires, billionaire corporations, not least in Silicon Valley, a lot of them. And so they've divided America. They've brought to power someone to focus the hatred upon, and they have created this woke mentality as the counter polarity to Trump, to focus that hatred. And they've divided America in a way that, it's hard to remember a time when it was anything like this, because political debate in America now is, do you love Trump or hate Trump? And what they've done in the last few days is brought together this Democratic Party, quote, ticket of Joe Biden running for president and Kamala Harris as his running mate. And it's a combination from hell. You've got Biden, who has serious cognitive problems that clearly are getting worse when you see his interviews. And therefore he's an empty shell. And then you've got Kamala Harris, who basically, if you asked her what her policies are, she would ask what you'd like them to be. And, oh yeah, well, funny enough, that's what my policies are. Yeah, and she'll tell someone else something else. He's another empty shell. And so if that mentality comes to power in November, then they won't be running the show. Clearly, it will be those in the shadows running through them, and we'll have a woke tidal wave of ludicrous, factless impositions that will just be at the end of America. From Trump's on Trump's side, although he is controlled by the same force, not least he's gives Israel whatever it wants, and he's been manipulated massively by his son-in-law Jared Kushner, who's a lifelong friend of Benjamin Netanyahu. But his constituency is not woke. It's people that basically want America to be what it used to be. Now, I'm not saying America was perfect, but at any point, absolutely not. But that's what they want. And therefore, he has a constituency he has to keep sweet if he's going to win in November. So he can't go deeply into this whole woke list of policies. But nor has he done what he said he'd do. So many things that he was elected to do, he hasn't done. He talks a good story. He still, you know, appeals to his natural constituency by telling them what they want to hear, but he doesn't do it. And so it's like in every country, this election is not about the best people for the job. It's about the least worst. And because Trump has this constituency he has to appeal to, although he doesn't have to get elected if he wins again, of course. You know, it would seem that that would be the least worst. But in the end, politics is not going to change anything, because it's there not to change anything. It's there to advance this agenda. And if anything's going to change, it's not politicians who are going to change it. It's people ceasing to acquiesce to politicians who's going to change it.
I think the Irish situation will actually clarify that, because every country has a left and right. In Ireland, you had left, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. They're now in power. One was supporting the other for the last few years. Now they're both together in power with the Greens, and nothing has changed. It's actually gone worse. You know, they're voting for vulture funds. There's money gone to PEPCO, you know, the European Army. So because that proves that a government doesn't work.
It doesn't matter who you vote for, the government still gets in, as they say in America, where they know how it works. And the Greens are another one, you see. I was a national spokesman for the British Green Party for a while. And I'm glad I was. It was in the 1980s. It was only for about a year. And I'm glad I was, because it was a tremendous insight into that mentality, which wasn't as extreme at the time, which has been very useful to me in understanding this whole environmental movement. Although it's not an environmental movement, it's a human caused climate change movement. You know, I joined the Green Party and became a national spokesman in a ridiculous short time. I mean, that's another story. I mean, it was a matter of weeks. I went from joining the party, becoming a national spokesman. It was ridiculous, but it's just the way that circumstances unfolded. But it was then an environmental party. It was looking for clean water. It was looking for clean food, free of pesticides and herbicides and other toxins. And it had a range of environmental concerns. But you look at it now, and it's all about human-caused climate change. Everything else is like, you know, peripheral. Like, for instance, at the last Green Party conference in Britain, the hierarchy stopped a debate about the effects of 5G. Now, the old Green Party would have been very concerned about 5G and the technological radiation effect on the population. Now they stopped the debate on it. It's all about human-caused climate change. And what's interesting, because the human-caused climate change hoax is being orchestrated by the same cult that's orchestrating the virus hoax, is the similarities between the two. If you look at the conscious and unconscious reasons for unsocial distancing, what it's doing is it's getting people to fear each other. You know, I've walked past people and they've absolutely darted out of the way because I got too close. People are terrified of each other. And what's the subconscious underlining theme of that? Humans are dangerous. And then you look at the Extinction Rebellion and the whole human-caused climate change thing. And what are they saying? Humans are dangerous. In fact, the most extreme, they're saying humans are so dangerous we should stop procreating and let humans die out. And then you look at the centralization of power, which is being, and the tyranny centralization of power, which is being, quote, justified by the virus. And then you look at the Green New Deal, and the solutions to the climate change hoax, and they are centralizations of power and dictating from the center the fine detail of people's lives, which of course they're doing with the virus as well. So these are two different expressions of the same thing. And the themes go on being quite blatantly common in their in what they're saying and the solutions that they want to impose. So the Greens are absolutely very appropriate that they're in that alliance, because they're all the same thing. You know, the Green parties of today are not the Green Party I joined in the 1980s.
And like, I mean, I have seen pictures from Time magazine where you had global cooling first, then it was global warming, then it changed to climate change. And like, if people don't get that, I'm not sure what will wake
Well,
up.
one of the things I do in the answer is I look at this, and one of the chapters, it's called "Why Demonize the Gas of Life?" And you know, we talked earlier about this inversion. Everything's inverted. If you want the truth, then basically reverse whatever the authorities are telling you, and you'll get very close to the truth, if not absolutely on it. And carbon dioxide is the gas of life. It's basically plant oxygen. We breathe it out and plants breathe it in. It's a wonderful system, mutually beneficial system. And I quote Princeton professors, etc., in the book, who are pointing out that it's not that we don't have enough, it's not that we don't have too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We don't have enough. Because since the increase in carbon dioxide, and the big increases are basically over, and they explain why. There's a way that carbon dioxide interacts with the atmosphere, which means that if you increase it by a certain amount, and you say get a 1 degree increase in temperature, to get a 2 degree and another 1 degree on top of that, you have to double your carbon dioxide. So if it's 800 parts per million in the atmosphere, to get a 1 degree, I'm just making these figures up to make the point, then you have to have another 1,600 increase parts per million, 1,600 parts per million, to get another degree. So basically, and this is why, and they point this out, this Extinction Rebellion climate change hoax have come up with these incredible feedback loops. Oh yeah, you hear Greta Thunberg talking about the feedback loops. They've had to create this myth about feedback loops because of this situation where it's not as simple. You increase carbon dioxide and it increases a certain amount of temperature. You increase by the same amount and you get the same increased temperature. Doesn't it falls away. So the increases in temperature caused by increases in carbon dioxide are basically over, as these people point out, and therefore the whole foundation of we're all going to die doesn't pan out at all. But where I'm going with this is this, and this is provable fact. This is accepted fact. Since we had an increase in carbon dioxide as a result of industrialization, the Earth has become significantly greener. Because I give the figures in the book, but once carbon dioxide falls to a certain level in the atmosphere, because what plants do in the natural world, they absorb carbon dioxide out of the air, out of the atmosphere. And when it falls to a certain amount, then they start to die. They go into carbon dioxide deficit, and it's like us going into oxygen deficit. And the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was falling to significantly dangerous levels before industrialization reversed the process. And as a former, well, one of the co-founders of Greenpeace has pointed out, human activity has actually helped the planet rather than threatened its existence. But none of this stuff ever gets out into the mainstream media because it's against the narrative.
It was actually the senators were grilling a meteorologist in the US, and he was working there for 40 or 50 years. He had all the statistics and everything. And he was showing that the temperature, it just fluctuates. But NASA and all the others, they doctored them. So all the figures that people are using have been doctored. And once I saw that, I knew straight away that it was a hoax.
Well, I tell the story in the answer, which came from the people involved, actually. They eventually went public on it. But when a bloke called Hansen, who was one of the people that really triggered this whole climate change, heating up the planet hoax, when he was making his initial presentation to a committee on Capitol Hill, the people that were orchestrating it, they went. This has come from their own admission. They went to the weather experts, and they asked for what are on average the hottest days of the year in Washington, and they picked one of the days, and as it turned out, it was extremely hot. And then what they did before this presentation by Hansen about the world's warming up and we're all going to die, is they fixed the heating system. They fixed the system of cooling the place down on an extremely hot day, so it didn't work. And so while Hansen is making his presentation, he's got sweat going down his head, which he's mopping, saying how the world's getting hotter. He's got people in the room with him who are sweltering because the air conditioning's been fixed not to work. And this is right at the start of it. And that's very appropriate because the whole thing has been a scam. And again, what have I just described? I've described a subconscious, implanted, subliminal perception. Here's a man talking about the earth warming up, and he's sweating, and it's hot, and people are, gasping for air. It's so hot, and there's no air conditioning. And I've been in Washington on days like that. It's stifling. And subconsciously, what he's saying, the earth's warming up, and what they're seeing are in sync to implant the idea that the earth is warming up. When, as you say, when it stopped warming for just a short period of warming, that's all it was. It went from global warming to climate change when the temperature stopped rising in the same way. The other thing they do is they have these sensors around the world where they're taking temperature readings, and again they've been found put in places which are close to a source of heat, right? So of course they're going to say the temperature's going up because there's a source of heat close to them. The whole thing's a scam, but it's the naivety. And when you break down how people have accepted what the government have told them, and when you break down how people believe in human-caused climate change, there's another common theme, and that is the disinterest in facts and seeing if the facts stand up. The whole woke mentality is about facts meaning nothing and how you feel meaning everything. So you don't have to back up what you say with facts. You just have to state that it's true. And you state that it's true without any facts, and you censor those who are coming with facts to show it's not true. And what's left is what you claim to be true but can't support to be true is what becomes the accepted explanation of what's happening when it's backed with no facts whatsoever. And when you go into this whole climate change arena, you find it's based on no facts whatsoever. It's based on constant repetition of the official story. The Earth's warming up, we're all going to die. The Earth's warming up, we're all going to die. The Earth's warming up, we're all going to die. What classic Greta Thunberg? When has she ever been asked even the most simple question about the science? And to explain how this all works, and to explain contradictions in the story. Never. She's just given a free ride to say whatever she likes. And what's been the organization that gave her initially her global platform, which led to the United Nations? You know, a 16-year-old from Sweden suddenly ends up addressing the United Nations, saying exactly what the official story demands. The World Economic Forum in Davos. That's who gave her her initial global platform, and then a year later invited her back. This is the same World Economic Forum, very much involved with people like Bill Gates, the billionaire fest in Davos, that was one of the prime players in Event 201, which was the coronavirus pandemic simulation, turned out to be a mirror of what has actually happened a few weeks before the whole thing started in China. It's everything connects to everything else when you get deeper and deeper into it. Personnel, organizations, all of it connects to the same agenda, the same end, the same goal.
And like, do you believe that they actually want us to know? Because you can easily hide yourself being a director of something or the funds that are, but every single thing is traceable. Like you can see, you can follow the trails, and it constantly leads back to the same people.
Yeah, but there's two things. First of all, people that have, and I keep coming back to this, this description because it's very important. Those that have the self-respect to do their own research instead of just accepting the official story are, to say the least, not the majority. So they know that the general population are not going to find out these things because they'll never even go where they need to go to see them. And the other thing is that, again, it's all about psychology, because if they can show you what they're doing and nothing's done about it, again, that's all part of this psychology of submission. Yeah, we can see what's going on, but I mean, you know, what are we going to do about it? Well, how about the power of no? How about the power of non-compliance, the power of non-acquiescence, and ceasing to become part, and a major part, a key part in acquiescing to our own enslavement? So, you know, the psychology is something that, from a conscious point of view, you'd say, well, why did they do that? But from an unconscious point of view, you can see why they're doing that. It's the same principle, really, of giving you ridiculous things to do, which you can see are ridiculous, but you still do them. It's breaking down this. Well, it's breaking down self-respect, because when you concede self-respect, that's when you start subjugating. That's when you start submitting. While you've got self-respect, you won't go there. So they're breaking it down and breaking it down all the time.
Like I had written a book, I didn't release it because I was warned not to, and I know that you haven't had the fare of that, but I was going like the solutions, And I think for, like, say, the individuals, if you look at, say, like the doctors, the hospitals, where they're actually doing these things, where, you know, that they have to go back and look in the mirror. They have to talk to their wife and talk to their children, because their children are going to be slaves of the future.
Well, I would say that to doctors, and I would say that to medical people in general. I would also say it to police officers.
Yeah.
I'd say it to government administrators who are doing it without actually being instigators of it. You know, what you're doing is you are playing vital roles in enslaving your own kids and grandkids. I mean, if you think it's bad now, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think it's going to be like for them when we get to that stage, with all the psychological demolition that's going on in the targeting of the psychology of young people with all this stuff? Where do you think it's going to be then? So, you know, it's not about buying the latest trainers and the latest smartphone because you love your kids. It's about defending their freedom and giving them a life in which they have the freedom to go the way they choose, and not just be a computer terminal on someone else's internet, because that's where it's going. Now, this is leading to the connection of artificial intelligence to the human brain. They're openly talking about it in Silicon Valley, and even giving you a time scale of 2030 and that whole period. And you, doctors who know you're being told, for instance, to put COVID-19 on death certificates when you have no evidence, in fact, often you know that that's not the cause, you are helping to enslave your own kids and grandkids by promoting a lie, which is leading to a public reaction, which is leading down the road to the enslavement of your kids and grandkids. And police officers, what are you doing? You know, I've said to people in uniform, and there are some real decent people in uniform, but there's some real psychopaths as well, and some people who really wouldn't pass an intelligence test of any level. I say to them, you have no power, you know. You as an individual have no power as a police officer, because your power is in your uniform. Your power comes as being an extension of the state, and it's your uniform that holds the power. So your uniform is not, your power is not in you, it's in the wardrobe. So take your uniform off, okay. So where's your power now to impose on people? Gone, because you never had it. You're just an animator of a uniform. It's the uniform that had it. And when you take that uniform off, or when you leave the police force or whatever, you are going to be subject to all the things that you have helped to impose on the people. And police officers, surely, and doctors and all these people in these institutions should be saying, am I serving people? Am I serving the interests of people, the health of people, the freedom of people? Or am I serving the state to delete those things? And if it's the latter, then what are you doing, again, acquiescing to what you're told to do? You know, what was that came up again and again at the Nuremberg trials? I was only following orders. How could Hitler impose his will upon the German nation unless A, the German nation acquiesced to him, and B, there was lots of people in uniform that imposed that will upon the population? It's exactly what's happening now. It's what's happening in Victoria, in Melbourne, etc., in Australia as we speak. And so what they do is they take members of the target population and they put them in uniform, which is not their power, it's the elite's power, which they animate, and they get members of the population to impose tyranny upon the population, including their own kids and grandkids who have to live in the tyranny that they're helping to impose. And what the big thing that stops people just not doing that is fear of the consequences. Well, I might lose my job, this might happen, that might happen. But significant as that is in the moment, it's as nothing compared with the consequences of not doing it. Because, you know, where we're going, the road we're going down, would make George Orwell wince and say, my God, I underestimated it by a massive factor. Because we're going into a world in which not only are we imposed upon by uniforms on behalf of the state, but the idea is to impose upon us directly by connections to artificial intelligence and technology. So we're facing a big question here. Are we going to go on just accepting this stuff because what I've just described is just waiting, just down the road, not very far now? Or are we going to just take our power back, stop acquiescing, and it's over? Because these people cannot impose their will on billions if a good chunk of those billions refuse to cooperate with their own enslavement. And it's summoning the courage, not just the courage, but the realization of where this is going and the consequences of now and non-acquiescence are far, far less than the consequences of allowing it to go where it wants to go.
And you mentioned about the fight, like with these satellites that are going up in the air, it's like Elon Musk is like 40,000 or 100,000 satellites that are going up. People don't realize that you're going to be bombarded with these frequencies, and no matter where you live.
Yeah, that's all part of the artificial intelligence control of humanity. Putting these satellites up in low orbit and firing 5G, etc., at the Earth to create what I've been calling for decades, saying that this was coming. The technological sub-reality is known as the smart grid now, officially. And if you just, to put it in perspective, Elon Musk, who is a complete fraud, where the world is going is towards a technocracy where the world is not run by even elected politicians. They want an end to all that stuff, but by technocrats, bureaucrats, scientists, medical technocrats that are driving this virus pandemic hoax. So it's a technocracy. China is a technocracy, controls through technology and technocrats, not elected people. And Elon Musk's grandfather was the head of the Technocratic Party of Canada in the 1930s when that party was pushing for this very world. And that the emergence of Silicon Valley is the emergence of technocrats. It's run by technocrats who have far more power than politicians now. So Musk, who plays the good cop, is actually a complete fraud, knows exactly what he's doing. And it explains why he says AI could be the end of humanity, good cop, but at the same time starts a company called Neuralink to connect computers to the human brain. And to put it into perspective, he's had permission from the Federal Communications Commission in America, which is owned by this cult, which owns Musk. That's why they give him permission to put these satellites up. And he's got permission for thousands. He wants 42,000, he says, eventually, but he's got permission for thousands. And they're going up all the time. And as they go up, just the early ones have been going up more every week. The world of astronomy has said we can't see the night sky. We can no longer study the night sky as we could before because of these Musk satellites in a low orbit. So imagine when that's happening now, and the astronomy organizations are speaking publicly about it. What is the night sky going to be like? When there's thousands of these things up there, when there's 12,000, I think that's what he initially has permission for. And then there's 42,000, and he's not the only people doing it. Bezos at Amazon's doing it. The Gates Foundation is funding other groups doing it. There's another organization, I think it's called OneWeb, I think it's out of Britain, who are doing it. There isn't going to be a night sky as we know it when these people get on with this. And it's all to do with creating this technological sub-reality where there's an attachment to the human brain by AI, and AI then becomes the human mind, and human thinking as we perceive it is finished. This is openly what they're saying, these people in Silicon Valley, like Ray Kurzweil, the Google executive, that once the connection to AI is made, then AI will do more and more of human thinking until human thinking as we know it now is basically negligible. He's openly said that. Because there comes a point where you can no longer just manipulate under the radar as what they've done up to this point. Because if you're going to change society in the way you want, you have to change society in a way that people can see you're changing society. So you move from hiding it to selling it. And so they're moving and imposing it. So we're seeing the imposition, and we're also seeing the sales pitch, which from people like Kurzweil is that if we get our brains connected to AI, we'll become like the gods. We will become superhuman. But the idea is we become post-human. That's the whole point. Again, another inversion. And so this is where it's going. And the whole vaccine and stuff is involved in this in various ways that I talk about in the answer. It's all connected in the end, and it's we're at this cusp. We're at this this fork in the road.
And like you've got Elon, like, because there was a lot of these people at the start. I thought they were good boys, and once you start doing this, is there any good guys out there? Who are the people that we should be kind of getting behind? Is there anyone that's?
Well, the ones that are seeking to uncover the truth are not operating in the system. They're operating outside the system and trying to expose the system for what it is. So you're not going to find those people in the upper echelons of the institutions, the upper echelons of Silicon Valley, because you progress up the hierarchy of this cult, up the hierarchy, therefore, of the corporations and all these other institutions, because you are reliably serving the interests of the cult. Even if you're at a level in the hierarchy where you don't even know there's a cult, you're still serving their interests. And so it's those people that get into these positions of power. People that are challenging their interests don't get into those positions of power. So I think if we looked for people within the system, we're gonna look for a long time before we find anyone that really is seeking to undermine it and to expose it, because they don't last very long within the system. It spits them out, and in the end, it's not looking to other people that's going to make the difference. It's people ceasing to acquiesce, and other people seeking to acquiesce, and other people seeking to acquiesce, until we get this vast number of people we need, all of which are ceasing to acquiesce. And at that point, the consequences end. I'll give you an example. If one or two doctors come out, we've seen it, and say what's really going on, well, they can get marginalized, they can get fired, some have, they can get demonized, and they can be removed. But say 30% of doctors in the world came out and said the same. Well, you can't fire 30% of doctors, and nor can you ignore them when they're all saying the same thing. And this is what I mean by there comes a point where so many people are not acquiescing and are telling the truth that there are no consequences. It's when one or two people do it and they get picked off. But at some point, the process has to start. Otherwise, it never starts. And, you know, all these rules about you can't have more than a handful of people meeting in the same place, nothing to do with health. It's to do with stopping a momentum building of non-acquiescence, which they're terrified of. That's what they're absolutely terrified of, because they know they can't handle it, and it's over when people do that. And so, but some people have got to start. This is why I'm saying I'm not doing any of it. You know, whatever consequences, whatever, eventually, I'm not doing it. And therefore, I'm not wearing a mask. I'm not doing any of these things that they're demanding of me. I won't do it, and I'll never do it. And what they do in response to that, they'll have to do. But I'm still not doing it, because someone has to start this. Otherwise, there's no momentum going to start if no one does it. And I'm 68. I have no fear of death. I have no fear of the authorities. I have no fear of the cult, none whatsoever. Bunch of little boys in short trousers to me. They have no power except the power we give them, and therefore do what you bloody will. But I ain't doing it. End of story.
You and me both.
And all we need to do is to have enough people do that, and it's over. Because, you know, there's a lot of people out there that are doing what they're told, but if they just had an example of someone not doing it, or groups of people not doing it, they would get involved. I mean, I've been told stories by my own family where they go to a place and they won't wear a mask, none of them, and suddenly people who were wearing masks start taking them off.
Yeah.
So it has to start somewhere. And there are people that are willing to do that and are doing that, but it needs to build. But it has to start somewhere. I mean, it better start now, because I can't emphasize enough the consequences of not wearing a mask, whatever they may be, pale into insignificance of where this is going if we don't head it off.
Exactly. Listen, it's been wonderful. And I want to tell people the book, I know my screen doesn't show, but it's called The Answer. You're a fantastic author. I love the way that you write, because I've read some of your other books as well. I would encourage people to actually read your book. And I see the Iconic as well, because I've been looking at, you might tell people about the Iconic, because you've got videos and stuff up on that.
Yeah, we started Iconic in November. My son, Jamie, started it because we could see the mass censorship coming. And it's a platform that's now got about 750 series, podcasts, full-length feature documentaries, which we're adding to all the time. Is just come out, an original Iconic documentary called Unnatural, which is about the effects of smart technology in electromagnetic fields. And there are, I mean, I put stuff on there, my own stuff every week. I go through the news of the week, etc. And what's interesting is we're getting a lot of mainstream people now taking part in these documentaries. Like the Unnatural documentary was almost entirely, apart from me, I'm in it a couple of times making my comments, but everyone else in it's mainstream person. So this is the whole idea of Iconic, is to give a platform to people who are being increasingly censored elsewhere, and I think it's a fantastic platform. By the way, I just mentioned what we're going to be announcing in a few days is I'm going to be doing, well, I was supposed to be doing a 4-hour presentation with all my images, etc., to an audience in Manchester in November, but of course, you know, that's unlikely. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do a 4-hour presentation on September the 19th, and it's going to be at a time which will be easily available for, you know, everyone in Europe and right across to the west coast of America. I'm going to do a 4-hour presentation live, a live stream, as I do to audiences, but of course there won't be an audience. and pull it all together. Not just the pandemic, but how that fits within the greater picture, and also what we can do about it, which is what the answer is about, really. I mean, it's about exposing what's happening, but the whole theme of the answer is, so what do we do about it? How can we turn this around? And the answer is in there, but it's whether people will go for it, because they fear the consequences of doing so. But so that's going to be on September the 19th. I think it's going to be around 5 or 6 o'clock. It's going to start PM, obviously, UK time, and I think that will be very powerful.
And they'll find that on theiconic.com. We'll let the information for that.
Yeah, I mean, people who go for the live stream, I think Jamie said they're also going to get 2 weeks of subscription to Iconic as well. And there's also davidicke.com, which is the website I've had all along, where people can go there, and the news stories there every day, putting the news into a different context of what you get in the mainstream media. So we're doing a lot of work, and especially now, because we have this window before they start kicking in the extremes of the winter lockdown, which is certainly coming, to try to get across to people, as many people as possible, that actually this is not some natural random event. It's been planned a long time, and it's been planned by people that want to completely delete your freedom. So we stand together now, or united we fall, or disunited rather, we fall.
I suppose you've actually seen in the last 6 months, there's a lot more people that are getting on board this than previously. I've noticed a lot. Yeah.
When it's so in your face, it demands an enormous level of denial. Many people still manage to summon that level of denial, as we've seen. But, for people who in any way have allowed themselves to be thinking and intelligent, looking at what's happened in the last few months, it's impossible not to realize that the world is not like you thought it was, that there are forces at work that are not what you believed existed. And therefore, this has got a lot of people off the fence. People who were like, oh, no, I'm sure there's some manipulation going on. And even people have said, oh, no, I've never really thought about it. Suddenly they've been focused enough to say, hold on, something is going on, isn't it? So it's been a very positive thing in that sense. But what we need is for those people to move from seeing the way it works, or at least some level of way it works, to symbolically crossing the street and saying, okay, so what do I do about it? And it's not about actually doing anything. It's not about fighting the enemy, and it's not about even protesting, although people can do that as a visual expression that some things are changing. It's just the power of no. That's all it is. The power of no. I'm not doing it. No, not doing it. If people come out of Downing Street or Washington or any other parliament or any other, center of power, perceived power, and say we've had a meeting and we've decided this is what's going to happen. If enough people say we're not doing it, they've got no power. Their power is in people saying, well, I don't want to do it, but I better do it because they say we should. That's their power. And when we stop doing it, this is over. It's over. They cannot impose upon a non-acquiescing population. Because if you break this down to the inner core of this web, you get them in one room. And they're manipulating the best part of 8 billion people, only because the 8 billion allow themselves to be manipulated. And when we stop the perceived power of authority will be shown to to be what it's always been, illusory.
I believe change is there. I believe people will come together and make the change that we need.
Yeah, and I think one of the big key points in this will be, I mean, in America, the government payments have now ended. The British government has said the so-called furlough payments to those who were not allowed to work will end in October. And there reaches a point where you've got nothing left to lose. It's like that old song, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. And while people think they have something to lose, they will acquiesce, thinking that that will help them not lose it. I think Churchill talked about people feeding the crocodile, so in the hope that it would eat them last. But when you've got nothing left to lose, and so many people are going to be in that position, if not now, as many are, but a lot more very soon, then maybe we'll see a different situation in terms of the numbers that are ceasing to acquiesce, because when you've got nothing left to lose, you look at situations in a very, very different way. You know, if you, I've used this analogy before, you know, if there's an army coming at you, excuse me, and in this sense, it's not an army, it's a few, but symbolically, an army coming at you. If you've got a way of getting away, you'll probably run, because you can get away. Symbolic of you've got something to lose, so get away. But if you're in a canyon and there's only one way out and one way in, and the army's coming through that one way in, then you've got nothing left to lose, because they're coming anyway. So in that situation, instead of running, because there's nowhere to run, you'll stand up and do things that you wouldn't normally do. And that's going to be a key point in the run up into towards Christmas, when people realize how bad this is, in terms of their response to it. And so I think by Christmas we'll have a very good idea of how many are actually prepared to stand up and say enough.
Yeah. Listen, David, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing all your wisdom. And I look forward to going on the Iconic and listen to you in a few days. I'll put all the links on the thing so people can find it and be able to get the book and also get the thing. So that's all from the Awakening Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on awakeningpodcast.org. Be sure to share with your friends. We're going to be on YouTube and BitChute unless they take it down. So give us a thumbs up on that. Until next week, take care.